A few years ago, I was visiting my parents' place in Kingston. And in Kingston, I have a really good friend, and his name's Ryan. And so I was texting him, and I was like, hey, Ryan, like, I'm really craving McDonald's. Can you help me out? You want to meet me halfway? And so he texts back. He's like, yeah, let's meet up. Let's go for McDonald's. And I already knew what I wanted to get. It was a quarter pounder with the fries, hold the pickles, and a medium Coke. Not to mention, this was also at midnight as well. And so we arrived there, and because I knew what I was going to get, he's looking at the menu, reading through, trying to figure out what he's going to get. And so I start scanning across that room. And as I look in the room, there's this one girl kind of off to the corner, and she's slumped over, hair's in front of her face, and she's got a bag next to her. And there was just something in my heart that was like saying, this is not right. There's something missing here. And so I turned to my friend Ryan and said, hey, like I'm not really good with words. I don't really know how to start this, but we need to go talk with her. And so he grabs his food, and we sit down in front of her. And we say, hey, like, are you okay? And she takes a moment to respond, and she moves her hair out of her face. And for the first time, I realized she's been crying, puffy eyes, mascara all over her face. And she begins to kind of start sharing with us just what she's been going through. She'd been bullied. She'd been ostracized. She felt like everyone hated her, and she was really at her wit's end. As she began to share her story, she began to share about how, like, the only reason she came here to the McDonald's was she was just kind of psyching herself out, getting ready to go jump into the middle of the highway, which is just across the street. And moments before we arrived, she had prayed, God, if you exist, if you care about me, you need to do something, otherwise I'm going to end it here. And it was just one of these powerful moments where I look at what God had done, and I was like, God cared about her. And so we began to share with her God's plan for her, about how he loves her, how like she's intentionally created. And we began to listen with her, and we ended up getting her connected with a church and such. But it was just this profound moment where I got to see someone who was at their wit's end, who was hopeless, literally be saved because of the gospel, because of the hope that Christ brings. And we're in a time and a period of life right now with the lockdown, but I also understand that there are families in our church that are wrestling immensely, and hope is something so desperately needed. I want to commend you, church. Like, you guys are incredible at sharing hope. You, by default, are people who profess it, who share about it. And that's part of what it means to live like Christ, to share this hope. And I know some of you are going to be like, I don't know if I really do this. I feel quite discouraged. But I want to say, as someone who's new with fresh eyes, like you have been bold in this area, and I just want to commend you. Why is it that in this country, it's beautiful, but it's like, let me just double check. It's 3 degrees out, and I am freezing cold. Yet in Canada, 3 degrees is almost like t-shirt weather. I don't get it. Anyways, let's keep going. Jesus entered Jericho, passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector, and he was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. And so he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached that spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down and at once welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of the sinners. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, Lord, look, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. I love that story and that encounter because that story is really a story of hope and what hope can do. Here's Zacchaeus. He's ostracized by society because he's not only is he a tax collector, he's the chief tax collector. And tax collectors were known for being scummy and for kind of ripping people off and bullying people using the Roman soldiers to their advantage. No one liked a tax collector, especially the chief tax collector. And so here's Zacchaeus. He hears that this rabbi, this teacher, this Jesus guy is coming. And he's like, there's something in my heart that I need addressed, that is drawing me to him. And so Zacchaeus, he goes and he tries to find Jesus, tries to see Jesus, but then there's this barricade made by the crowd, and as someone who's short, as someone who's not liked by society, no one's moving aside and letting this guy go. Everyone is like, come on, get out of the way. And here's this moment where this Zacchaeus guy could have just said, all right, I give up. I guess this is not for me. But there's something stirring in his heart, and he's like, I'm still searching. And so he goes and he climbs this tree, and as he's up in the tree, watching as Jesus goes by, Jesus doesn't simply just walk by. He doesn't just simply make eye contact. He stops, looks, and says, Zacchaeus. And amidst this whole crowd, Jesus is pointing him out and saying, hey, I'm going to go over to your house. I'm going to have a meal with you. And all of a sudden, this guy who's often hated, who's disregarded by society, is given this position where he can dine with the Son of God. And at that, the crowd are kind of upset and gasping and muttering like Jesus is going over and having a meal with the sinner? And as they're having this meal that is being laid out before Jesus, which was this cultural way of accepting people, Zacchaeus leans back and says, Lord, I want to pay everyone back. I want to give to the poor. I want to make things right. And what I love about this story is it's not just hope in the sense of like, oh, this would be something nice. It's hope that leads to change, and a change that will change others as well. And I love that story, and that's what it is, and that's what hope should be doing, is it should be encountering people who are ostracized, who are struggling, who are hungering for hope, help them, and then equip them. And so we're going to work through and talk about this in a moment. So you might remember we were working a couple months ago on just kind of a scavenger hunt, trying to figure out, okay, what is it that we could be doing? But we were really looking at just gathering information and intel about our community. And this is where hope and what we've got as the gospel is so practical with what's going on in our communities and how we're going to share it. And so I just want to share a couple findings from your reports, from your research, and just kind of help us give some background, some context. So the first thing that kind of stood out was, according to a report that came out in 2014, 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem at some point in their lives in Scotland. And at 1 in 6 adults at any given point are wrestling with some degree of mental health. And I suspect that will be substantially inflated because of our lockdown, because of our restrictions. Additionally, Paisley and Renfrewshire are some of the most deprived areas in Scotland. Paisley specifically has the 4th and 9th most deprived areas in this country. And what's really fascinating, someone pointed out, was each of our connect points are within 2 miles from some of the 10% most critical areas. And so what I mean by that is we are living in the hot pockets of areas of need, areas where hope is essential. Additionally, one of the areas that Paisley's wrestling with and the Renfrewshire wrestles with is unemployment. 69 out of the 85 data zones in our area have a unemployment rate that's higher than 5%. And what that really says is there's a lot of people who are unemployed in our area. Now, those are just some of the areas that people are wrestling with. And so we've got the gospel, we've got this good news, but now the question is, how do we connect these two things? And how do we really begin to live like Christ? So the question I want you to think through today and to discuss will be, okay, what are things that we can share that create hope for those around us? Okay, so what can we do to change the culture in our community? And so just start brainstorming and thinking. And so as we come together this morning, you're going to break out into different groups for the next couple weeks. And each group, each week, it's going to be different than what you're used to from the previous week. And that's just really so that we can create, pull in creativity, give different group dynamics, but also let you check in with other people. Now, as we're walking through this, you have different VLT members and leaders who are going to kind of facilitate the conversation. And I want you to understand, we're looking at our church's vision in a way that we're saying, okay, everything's on the table, all the cards. So don't be stuck to thinking we got to do what we've been doing. So if there's a ministry that we think is really good, we don't have to do that. Maybe God might be saying, now's the time to start something different. Everything's on the table. So from budget, schedules, things that we know are very successful, let's just put those up in the air and just really kind of start thinking, okay, how do we share hope in our area? Now, the leaders, the ones who are facilitating this time, I'm asking them to really pull out and get people engaged and talking. So if they sometimes kind of almost cut you off or kind of speed you up, don't take that personally. It's just we're trying to pull as many different people. So just know, like, we're trying to hear it from as many different people on this process. And the last part is, sometimes you might have a point where you're brainstorming, you've got this great idea, you think it's going to be life-changing. And I want you to know that what the leadership, the VLT and the CLT are going to do is, we're going to take all these different ideas and we're going to prayerfully consider and ask God, okay, what is it that we're really going to hone in on? And if we don't end up choosing your idea and you kind of start wrestling with that, there's a couple of things I want to point out. One, by all means, ask us, challenge us on that. But the other thing I want you to think and consider is, maybe the reason you're passionate about it or feel strong about it is because God's trying to prompt your heart to carry this out as well. And so it's going to be a creative time. And this week's going to be the first week, and then in 2 weeks' time, it's going to be the second week, and 3, and so on and so forth. So have fun with this, and I'm excited because I believe wholeheartedly that each of you, from your experience, from your walk with God, from your journey, from your hurts, from your strengths, I believe that God's going to work and speak in and through us and through you guys. So please don't hold back on sharing if you think and feel something's like really pressing on your heart. All right, so with that being the case, let's just get into it, and we'll break out into our breakout groups. And I just want to say thank you, church, for being so open to trying things different, doing things differently, and it's going to be exciting.